Hi everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to week 7 of English 3 Diploma 3 of KU32101. This week we'll be talking about interviewing former students and we'll be looking at how we ask questions in the past tense. Here's a brief outline of our lesson. We'll begin with a review exercise and something a little bit different. Then we will look at the objectives of this lesson, warm-ups, a week 7 topic, which is interviewing former students, the grammar, which is the simple past tense of questions, and then practice and review ready for our practicum on Tuesday. And once again, I'd just like to remind you of our online learning protocols. Please do your homework prior to the practicum. Keep your camera on for the entire session. Be ready to share your work on the screen and listen for your name and be ready to answer. I just want to commend everyone. Last week you did a really good job of participating and offering answers when required. It made the learning much more exciting and I'm sure you got more out of it. This week at the practicum we'll be required to do a lot more talking, so be ready to share. Firstly, in our review exercise, I want you to ask one of your friends to tell you one thing that they learned last week and tell them one thing that you learned. For example, what did you study last week? And you could answer that. I studied about how graphical user interfaces in the future can use virtual reality. Write your answers in the comments below. You don't need to ask an actual person unless you're able. You can make up the answers. So pretend to ask someone a question and then provide an answer. Today for our warm-up, we'll be watching a video of a job interview. A job interview is when an employer interviews a prospective employee for a new job. The employer, the interviewer, must ask the prospective employee, the interviewee, many questions to decide if they are suitable to take the job. I want you to listen carefully to the grammatical forms of the questions asked and to the grammatical forms of the answers. Listen and think about how past tense is used in the question. The past tense is used when asking and telling what has been done before now. When we use the simple past tense, it tells us that the action has finished. I had to take a job interview for the job I'm doing now. I was doing my job for 3 years, but then I had an interview at the end of last year and I had to say all of the things that I'd done, and then the interviewer made a decision about whether I was the right person for the job. After you finish your diploma or your degree, you'll need to go for job interviews to apply for new positions. Follow the YouTube link below, and when you've finished, write down your answers and be ready to share them on Tuesday. In the job interview you just listened to, there's an interesting idiom that's used when Mary's referring to why she had left her last job. An idiom is a word or phrase which means something different from its literal meaning. Idioms are common phrases or terms whose meaning is changed but can be understood by their popular use. Idioms are very difficult to understand if you didn't grow up speaking the language, but you can learn them. In the interview we just listened to, the interviewer asked Mary why she left her last job, and Mary answered, "It was graveyard and I need to work days." The idiom she uses is graveyard. What I'd like you to do before Tuesday is see if you can find out what that means. Remember, there's a hint here in that it says work days. Have a look in a dictionary or look up popular idioms and it will give you an idea of what graveyard means and the other ways graveyard is used when talking about different times. Now this is something a little bit different. I want you to tell me a little about yourself. I want to know a little bit more about you. Something from your past and something about your future, what you want to do or what you think will happen in front of time now. So I want you to please answer the following questions and send me the answer by email. My university email is dab950@uowmail.edu.au. Please put a subject in the subject heading so I know that it's from you and what it's about. The first question I would like you to answer is, what was your favourite subject to study at high school? When I went to high school, my favourite subject was physics. The second question, what made you choose this diploma to study? Why are you doing this course now? I'm doing this practicum because I like teaching and I want to be able to teach in overseas locations. What job will you do when you finish your studies? I'd like to continue teaching because I really like doing it. Please try and do this before Tuesday. If not, we'll get it done after the practicum because I'd really like to see how you write and read a little bit about yourself. Here's a text that we're going to look at and answer some questions about. Pauline was 24 years old when he completed his higher national diploma in computing support in Jakarta. In his courses, he studied with over 50 students from all over Indonesia. His friend, Pauline, helped him the most in his studies. After graduating, he worked for a company providing support services for over 18 months. Now I'd like you to match these questions with the correct answers. Take your time to read them, pause the video if you need to, and then be ready to provide your answers on Tuesday. Now we move to our grammar part of the lesson. We're looking at how to ask a question. To ask a question in the simple past tense, we use did plus the subject of the sentence plus the root or the bare verb. So we just add did at the start of the sentence, then the subject, and then the base form of the verb. For example, did George win the first prize or the second prize? We add did to make it a question. George is the subject and win is the verb. Did you study graphical user interfaces last week? Remember, we need to add a question mark at the end of each sentence to let you know it's a question. We can also put how, where, why, who, whose, or what before did in our questions to make the circumstances or situation clear. These are question words, or sometimes referred to as interrogative words. In English, we sometimes refer to them as what words, even though not all of them start with a WH. But the what, where, why, who, whose, or what, how doesn't quite fit, but it allows us to ask questions, and we need to remember that these are question words. You'll notice in the first examples, like did George win the first prize or the second prize, we can answer yes or no. When we use how, where, why, whose, what, we ask the person that's answering the question to add more detail. They can't just provide a yes or no answer anymore, and it also allows us to get a lot more information when we're getting their response. For example, how did you go with your practice questions? Were they hard? Where did you answer your final task question? At home? Why did you write about windows in your answers? Who did you show your answers to? Just Miss Mona or Mr. Joel or Mr. David? What part of the lesson content did you find most difficult? Whose answer did you like the best? Now you'll notice with all of those questions down the bottom, the how, where, why, whose, or what, we need a lot more detail. With whose answer did you like best, we could answer just one person, but generally they're asking us to clarify. When we ask a question with the verb to be, we don't need to use did. Instead, we use the to be verbs was or were plus the subject. For example, was Mr. Joel clear in the lecture? Here we add was, and Mr. Joel's the subject and clear is the verb. Were there many interruptions in the bandwidth connection in the practicum session? I know I have a lot of practical problems with my internet. We can also use what, where, why, who, whose, and how with to be verbs in simple past tense questions. For example, what were the hardest questions? Why was the program so difficult? How was Windows the easiest to use? Who was the best student today? Whose answer was the best? Now remember, like all our grammar practice, it will get easier the more we use it. If you're not sure now, please feel free to ask a question and go through the exercises that are following, and it will give you a lot more idea about how we use these. Here's some examples when we're asking questions in the past. If we're asking about quantity, so the amount of something. How many days a week did you study? I studied for 4 days this week. How much programming did you do? I did no programming this week because I'm not studying computer science. When we're asking about time, we can ask when or what. So when did you study communication, or what time did you study communication? When we're asking about people, we use who or whose. So who taught you math, or whose classes did you most enjoy? Hopefully Miss Mona's. When we're asking about things, we use what. What made you choose computing support? What did you like most? When we're asking about actions, we use what again. What did you do on Friday? What happened on Monday morning? On Monday morning, I had to get up early to go to work, even though it was my holidays. This is our practice for the week. I'm going to read through the article for you, but I want you to study it as well. And then we've got some questions to answer that you'll need to get ready for in the practicum. In her first term, Pauline studied 6 subjects. She had classes on 4 days each week. On Monday morning, she had IT and informatics systems. Tuesday was a free day for home study. On Wednesday, she had system analysis in room 324. She studied computer architecture on Thursday. Programming happened on Friday mornings. Communication took place on Friday afternoon. She liked Mr. Blunt's classes most. She had 15-minute coffee breaks each day and a lunch break from 12 until 1 p.m. Our task as part of our practice. We need to create 5 questions to ask Pauline about her first term and then write Pauline's answers. So imagine you're interviewing Pauline. Write some questions and then answer using the text of what Pauline would have said. Use the simple past tense rules for questions we have looked at today. Refer only to the information in the passage for the questions, but for Pauline's answers, you should add extra information. Informal information. You can make it up. Pretend that you're Pauline and you're answering her questions. There's Pauline. Imagine you're in that interview situation and you're asking her about what she studied. This will be the dialogue part of our practicum. So as part of practice 2, you need to create 5 questions that you're going to ask another student in your class about the lesson content from weeks 1 to 7. Use the simple past tense rules for question we have looked at today. So what did you do? Did you do computer systems? Examples like that. But be prepared. You need to have all 7 questions, but during the course of the lesson, we'll be taking turns to ask these questions of our classmates. So be ready. Practice your questions. If you have any questions about what we're doing or how to use the simple past tense to ask questions, please contact myself or Miss Mona. You all have my email now if you want to ask questions, but if you're not confident asking me, be sure to ask Miss Mona and she will answer them for you. On Tuesday, be sure to have done all of your homework prior to the lesson, and you'll need to be prepared this week. So practice your word construction in past tense, and then we'll review the matter from the past 7 weeks. Here's the references for today. I hope you're all having a nice time where you are and the weather's nice. I'm still enjoying my holidays, but I'll be returning to school on Tuesday like you. Until then, I will see you at the practicum on Tuesday. Thank you for watching the video and remember to do your homework. Goodbye.